Hi, my name is James Andriella, and you are listening to the Back to Human podcast. On today's episode, I have my good friend, fellow health coach, retired speed walking champion, and author, Alvey Thompson. Today, we are going to dive into Alvey's journey as a health coach, his transition into fatherhood, and what it means to be dynamic. Without
Let's
further
go.
ado, Alvey, welcome to the show. Sorry, I had to throw that little speed walking bit in there.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. It's like my career I had to hang my jersey up in the Raptors because my camera woman was just occupied being pregnant and having a baby and all that. So for anyone out there that wants to be my 100% speed walking videographer, taking applications.
I mean, I imagine with progressive overload and such and how your speed is gonna increase, you might wanna invest in one of those, like, follow you drones. I know you've probably seen those before.
Oh,
But,
that's
no, I
true.
just I thought it was funny because Jade, um, the other day, she says on frequent occasions where it's like, "There's gonna be times," and I'm just like, boom, that Alvy pops in my head. So
Love
I've
that.
missed that for a while, it's funny.
I love that.
So, yeah, brother, so what pivotal moments have you had in your life, or what personal challenges did you go through that have influenced your philosophy on life coaching? How did you get into health coaching?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for me, a lot of my origin story really comes from my relationship with my mom. So my mom was my rock growing up. She provided everything for my brother and I when we were growing up. So once I graduated from college and my football career was over and I was moving from Georgetown back to South Florida, I was living with my mom and realizing really just how bad her health not only was then, but how bad it always was. And it was one of those things where I just never noticed it because I was so caught up in my life that I didn't really have any idea of how much she went through. So, for example, for as long as I can remember, even I go back to maybe my sophomore year of high school when I started driving on my own. And, I was blessed that my mom was able to provide me with a car, so I was able to drive myself to school. But I remember for high school, I'd wake up super early. It would be, whatever time it was, 6:30, leave the house, go to school. And because it was so early, I would see my mom sleeping and I wouldn't think anything of it. And then I go to school, have football practice, hang out with friends afterwards, and then I'd come back home and it'd be pretty late. Some nights it'd be, 8:30, and I would see my mom was sleeping. And in my mind, it's like, okay, in between that entire gap, she had got up, had an entire day, did her thing. But in reality, what it was is she was knocked out on her opioid medication. And that had been her life, not only when I was in high school, but also through college. And then just seeing all of the different things that caused once I became an or excuse me, before that's what I noticed once I became a young adult and moved back home. So it was one of these things for me where fast forward a couple years, I'm a personal trainer at this point. I'm having a lot of success training my clients. I'm having a lot of success in my own health, having lost, 50 pounds from my D lineman weight up to the current weight I was then. So dropping from like 285 to like 230, 235. And it was one of these things where I saw how much of an impact it's had on me and my clients by a lot of things we talk about: eating real food, exercising, getting enough rest and sleep, all of the foundational pieces. But the problem was, I wanted my mom to do all the same things, but I didn't have the emotional or mental capacity to really meet her where she was at. It was one of those things where it was like, Mom, you have to do what I'm doing. And if you don't do exactly how I'm telling you to do it, then it's not good enough. And I'm going to be upset with you. And that's what caused a lot of the arguments that we had since I moved back from school up until that point. And it was one of these things where my mom, years before, she had gastric bypass surgery, which is essentially a surgery that obese people get, where they essentially staple their stomach shut. Their stomach is smaller. And as a result, or the theory is supposed to be, well, hey, you can't eat as much food. So because your stomach's so small, you can't eat. It's like you're supposed to just lose all this weight. It's really like the more evasive version of, taking an Ozempic pill or something like that, right? And it was one of those things where my mom had that surgery when I was in high school. No, shoot, maybe middle school looking back. And she never really lost the weight. And the reason why she never lost the weight is because she never really changed her lifestyle. But you fast forward to my early adulthood, she started making some small changes and doing it her way. And she did start to lose a lot of weight. Like she probably lost almost 100 pounds, which was amazing. But now, because she solved that problem, it created a second problem or really unearthed an even bigger problem. And it was that she was so disgusted by the way that she looked because she had this excess skin. And that's typically what happens with most people when they lose weight, but especially when they go through a surgery like that and they're not really strength training, eating the right foods, and just really wasting away muscle, all of that. They end up having all this excess skin that they don't like. So, because my mom was very self conscious about this, she wanted to go and have the plastic surgery to get that skin removed, which is what most people who get that surgery did. The only problem was my mom was not the ideal candidate for that type of surgery. Not only was she addicted to her opioid medication, but she was type 2 diabetic. Obviously, she was obese. She had high blood pressure, heart issues. She had all these medications that she was on that basically every doctor she went to said, "Hey, Vicky, you can't get this surgery. It's not safe for you." One thing I will say about my mom is, she was never the type of person that if she wanted something would take no for an answer. So she kept searching, searching, searching until she eventually found a doctor that said, "Hey, Vicky, you have a hernia in your abdomen that I need to repair. But in order for me to get to that hernia, I need to remove all that excess skin from your midsection." And now this was her and the doctor's kind of wink, wink way of my mom getting what she wanted, which was all that excess skin removed from her midsection. So up to this point, like James, my mom has had so many surgeries and I've seen her have so many surgeries and go off to the hospital. And this was the first time. And, I was 20, gosh, I was 26 at the time because it's going to be, well, I'll get to it. But yeah, I was 26 at the time. And this was the first time I felt really nervous about her getting the surgery. And the day before she was set to get the surgery, I went to go meet her at her house. And I'm just talking to her, seeing how she's doing. And she was telling me, she's like, "Hey, like, I'm really nervous about this. I don't know." And I was like, "Mom, like, don't do it. You don't need the surgery. You and I will figure this out. Like, just don't have it." And after a lot of back and forth and talking through it, she was eventually like, "No, you know what? I'm going to still have this surgery." And that led to her and I getting into a huge argument, which was very common for those days. Um, but what I didn't realize was that that argument actually ended up being the last conversation that I ever had with my mom. So the next day she goes in for the surgery. She actually makes it out of surgery and she's telling a couple of, family friends that she felt off, like she couldn't just quite catch her breath. And very soon after that, she went into this episode where she couldn't breathe and the hospital had to induce her into a coma and they sent her to another special care facility. And essentially, my mom was hooked up to a breathing machine. She was in that coma for almost 8 to 10 weeks. And it was one of those things where none of the doctors had any answers, right? You had the heart doctor, you had the brain doctor, you had the lung person, the this, the that, and none of them had an answer on what was really going wrong, how to move forward, and eventually got to this place where as a family, we had to make the decision to pull the plug and to not have, my mom suffering in that type of way. And I can remember making that decision and, I'm leaving the special care facility, the room my mom was in, and, I go to the bathroom, leave the bathroom, come back on my car, and I'm just sitting in the parking lot looking at my in the mirror and just wondering how the hell did I get here? You know what I mean? It's like, how did this happen? Like this is the person that I love more than anybody. And even though we argued a lot in my, in her later life and in my young adulthood, it was one of these things where, and we've had conversations around this before, but it's like, I loved her so much. And it was like that level of love just in a weird way didn't allow me to have the compassion for her and just wanted to like force her and see her change so bad because deep down I was so scared and concerned about what would happen to her. And the worst thing did happen. So it was in that moment where I'm looking at myself in the mirror. I'm just like, man, I have to change. Like yeah, I can know all these things about nutrition. I can know all these things about proper, training and all of that. But if I can't meet the person that I love most in the world where she's at, it's like I'm missing the mark. And then that's what inspired me to look into life coaching, where I felt like that was going to give me the skill set I needed to have the compassion, have the empathy, be able to really understand where a person's at and be able to communicate with them in a way where it's not so much about me, quote unquote, making them change, but helping them realize why their change is so important and co-creating a plan that can get them from that A to Z. And ever since then, that's really transformed the way that I worked with people where it's no longer just about the physical changes that someone wants to make, but diving much deeper in that and wondering why are those changes so important? It's like, okay, you want to lose 50 pounds, but well, why is that? Is because that's going to make you more confident? It's going to give you the ability to run around with your kids? Is it going to allow you to take the tropical vacation and wear the bathing suit that you want and take off your shirt and things of that? Or is it anything else? But understanding the deeper root of why somebody wants to change has been a catalyst in really helping people get to their goals at a higher level and allowed me to work with people in a way that's more meaningful to me.
I didn't know that last bit of your mom's story, actually. I was under the impression because, you said before how she wasn't strong enough to make it through the surgery. I was under the impression that she actually passed away during the surgery, like, under anesthesia.
Oh.
So, I know that you guys had to just put Bentley down. We talked about it pre-show,
Mhm.
and obviously that's an animal compared to someone like your mother.
Right.
What what was it like those last final minutes, like, actually having to make that decision? How can you make that decision?
Yeah, it was for me, I mean, one, it's interesting because it's different as I reflect back on it versus maybe right there in the moment. I mean, during those times, I tried to be so stoic in front of my other family members when this was going on that I was very, very matter of fact on the outside, but on the inside, I was in so much pain. And for me, it was kind of like the writing was on the wall. Like I could not see based off of where my mom's current situation was at, and mainly just the lack of any faith that any of the doctors had. Like none of them had any answers. So it's like I can't see the answer. None of the doctors can see the answer. My mom's just sitting there, just in a comatose state, pretty much. And it was from there that I just understood that there really is no other solution. This is what it is. And it wasn't until after, she passed that like all the flood of emotions of like, wow, what does this really mean now that she's not here? And you fast forward almost 10 years later, this May will be 10 years from when she passed. And it's the same year that, well, Zion was born last year, my son, but, you know, there's nothing I think my mom would have loved more than to watch Zion grow up. Like, she loved me so much, and like I was such a mama's boy. She spoiled the heck out of me, where I just know how much she would have loved being there for Zion. So even 10 years ago, just reminiscing and thinking like, wow, like she's never going to see me get married, which she would have loved to see. She's never going to see any of her grandchildren, which I think would have made her happier than anything in the world. And it's like, when I was reflecting on those things after her death, like that stuff crushed me. And it really had me look at myself and just be like, why was I such an asshole to her? You know what I mean? It was very, everything I wanted her to do, even though it was coming from a place of love, it was also very self serving. It was about me and, how I had the answers, how it needed to be my way. And it's just realizing over time, it's like truly being of service has nothing to do with me. It has to do with the people I'm serving and, being a lot deeper in my faith now and understanding like, all right, if I'm simply here to live out God's will or to share the gifts that God has given me, Well, now it's way bigger than me. It has nothing to do with me, and it allows me to be in that place of service. And you know, part of me wishes I had that back then, but also at the same time, I think God's timing is never wrong. And my mom's death really was a catalyst for me being the person that I am today. And if my mom didn't die how she died, and our relationship being where it was at the time, I don't think Alejandro and I are married. I don't think Zion's my son. I don't work with people in the way that I work with them. I'm not doing what I'm doing. And my values might have been completely different. So it's one of those things where it's so hard in the moment. It's still hard reflecting back oftentimes and also understanding like this was part of the journey.
Almost as kind of bad as it seems to say, it's like almost like it had to happen.
Yeah, it's definitely a way of looking at it.
You sharing your story has definitely helped me because we've had these conversations plenty of times, and I realized that I was in your shoes. I haven't lost a close family member, but growing up in my household, once I quote unquote saw the light and I saw how much of a drastic change that I could make in my health, the first thing that you want to do is you want to spread that knowledge. Like you want
Oh yeah.
everyone to feel this way. It's like
Hmm.
there is another way to live life. It doesn't have to be this way. You don't need to be on blood pressure medications or pain medications. You can have energy. Your hip doesn't have to hurt. And how this showed up within my family, because I consider myself the black sheep of the family. Uh, I was very angry and very aggressive with how I wanted other people to change as well. And it's a
Yeah.
hard pill that I had to personally swallow, where you can lead a horse to water, but you absolutely cannot make them drink. I've heard
Right.
someone joke that you can put their head in the water, pretty much drown them, but I don't think that's going to work out too well. But how this showed up for me is I would see cereal on top of my refrigerator. That's always where we put it when I was growing up. And my mom would buy this thinking that it was healthy for them, like heart healthy cereal, whatever it was at the time. And I would just take
Right.
every box and I would throw it out. Or if I saw my brother-in-law coming in the house with 2 liters of soda, my sister was overweight, I would yell at him. It's like, "You're doing this, you're enabling." And I've gotten a lot better. I will say that. Like, I'm not nearly as triggered when I see these things. I accept things as they are. There's always still that hope that they will come around. Another thing that I realized too is, like, the closer you are to people, a lot of times it's more difficult for them to listen to have what you have to say or take advice from you. I don't know if this has showed up in your life. Well,
Oh yeah. No, 100%. Yeah. When they're really close to you, I can just speak for myself. It's like, my parents or my mom saw me as her son, you know what I'm saying? And then even with a lot of friends too, like I have so many friends now where I look at them and they know what I'm about. And, I used to be very aggressive with them and telling them, hey, don't eat this, don't eat that, you should eat this, do that. And at the end of the day, it never really landed with them. And then what I found is over time, when the ones were ready, they would reach out and they'd be curious and I could help them then. But I still have some of my dearest friends now who know all of very much of the same information you and I know, and they're still not willing to kick the comfort, whether it's because alcohol just has too strong of a pull on them, whether they're lazy or whatever it is. I have dear friends who are like that, and I still battle with it where part of me wants to be like, yo, like tighten up and let's get after it. Like you have kids, you have this, you have that. Like it's time to do it. No more excuses. But then at the same time, there's part of me that's like, you're a grown ass man. You're living your life. You know what to do. I'm here when you're ready. And even on the inside, I get to have a level of peace of like, well, this is what they're choosing. Like I know that I gave them the opportunity and I've shown them dignity. And something one of my mentors taught me is that dignity is offering something to somebody, but giving them the opportunity to say yes or no. So I've had a lot of friends who have said no, and I've had to just understand, like, hey, I gave them dignity and they made their decision and it is what it is.
I like that one. I like that one a lot, actually. You mentioned also how your arguments, they were coming from a place of love, and this is something that I found true to myself, and it's something that I've realized lately. The way that I was acting and the way that my message was coming out, it is the same. It's from a place of love. It's just distorted. It doesn't come out the way that I intend to, and it's from a place of fear of something bad happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel that.
If you could go back Obviously, we've discussed that some things needed to happen. With how you've changed your coaching approach, do you think that you would talk to your mother differently?
Yeah, I would. I would. And not even to put it through the lens of like, oh, I'm doing this from a place of regret, but more so just a place of wisdom, of knowing better and being able to do better. What would have worked well for her would have been me simply doing the stuff with her step by step, side by side. So like my mom loved spending time with me. That was one of her favorite things. But because I was in my own head about things and where my ego was, the last thing I ever wanted to do at that time was like hang out with my mom or really be around her, right? So if I could go back, I would have just, hey, let's go out for walks, right? Because she would have did that. Even if I said, hey, let's go to the gym, she would go to the gym with me because, she would do that on her own a little bit. And same thing with food. I would just literally be like, hey, let's cook some food together. Let's prep the food together. Let's sit down, enjoy a meal, do all of that. But it was one of those things where I can see that I was in a very negative mental and emotional headspace then, where, this is before you met me or Jade or a lot of people met me. Well, I was a head case, James, like super bad attitude, very short tempered. And even as I changed my diet and I was healing, it opened up a lot of space for me to have a lot more composure with everyone else but my mom, right? And it's one of those things where if I could have that level of composure with her now, I think it would have looked a lot different. um, but it was one of those things where if I didn't go on that journey and if she didn't pass the way that she passed, I don't know how much longer it would have taken me to get to that place to really start working on myself.
So you were initially a trainer, and then you said
Mhm.
that this kind of jump-started your career as more of a life coach. What's the difference between those two? A
Between
trainer
a
and a life
trainer
coach?
and a life coach. So the way that I look at it is being a trainer, that work is really focused on what I'm doing with that person inside the gym for that 1 hour, 3, 4 hours a week versus being a life coach is really helping my clients, helping people understand how to take proper action, how to change their beliefs, and all the stuff outside of the gym. So it'd be a lot around reframing their mindset. It's a lot about creating concrete plans of action that they can follow through on. And then from there, we actually unpack. All right, hey, how did it go when you actually went and put this thing into action? Or if you didn't do it, what are the things that gotten in the way? Was it something to do with the way you were thinking? Was it something specifically that happened that you didn't anticipate that involved other people? Whatever it may be, but the life coaching versus the personal training, it really is focused on in the way that I do it, very dynamic process. It's career, relationships, health. And even when I say health, it's like health is it's the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, the social, the financial, like all of that reflects health. So my life coaching is really about like, hey, how do we one get very clear on what is the type of life you're trying to live? What's your goal for the next 90 days, 1 year, 3 years, 5, 10 years? And how do we look at those goals through all those aspects of your life?
What do you think the main struggle that a person has with jumping into these new habits? And I guess the way that I actually want to reframe this, the way that it was coming up in my head is what in the past has prevented you from pursuing something that you know that you probably should?
So for me personally, or you're saying work with others?
I'm gonna say for you personally, because I'm thinking about what has prevented me from taking a leap. And I guess the first thing that would come to mind is because for whatever reason, maybe subconsciously I don't believe that I can actually achieve it.
I hear that. Yeah, it's a great question. So for me, it usually stems around a combination of limiting beliefs and then fear, I guess. I don't even know if fear is the right word, but when I say limiting beliefs, it's like if I don't do something, it's usually because, and it's something I think I should be doing or I know I should be doing. If I don't do it, it's because there's some type of mental block that I'm having. It's something in the mindset. It's something that I'm making up in my own head. It's me trying to forecast what will happen if I do that thing. And because I'm making up all of these, elaborate stories and whatnot, it can cause me to not take action. Right. So that's how I see it for myself. And then when I say fear, a lie I used to tell myself was that that I had like a fear of success, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm scared if I actually, make all this impact and do all these things. But I look deeper than that. It wasn't so much a fear of success as it was a fear of like, damn, do I want this much stuff on my plate? Right? Because it's not the success in itself that I was afraid of. Like, I'm not afraid of having more money. I'm not afraid of having more opportunities. I'm not afraid of having more people that I'm impacting and things of that nature. But when I look back, it's like, oh no, I was actually afraid of putting all of this stuff on my plate because what does that mean I'm going to have to give up or stop doing? And I've been a person for much of my life where there's nothing more valuable than, say, my time. You know what I mean? Like, there's no dollar amount where I can put a package together. I can have a conversation with somebody and they want to know, like, oh, like, what's your hourly rate? It's like, it doesn't even work that way because there's just no amount of money that I can put on my time. So it was more so this idea of like, oh, damn, if I start taking on all these clients or I start taking on all these projects, well, now I'm not going to have time to do all of these other things that I really enjoy doing. I want to make sure I can go to the gym enough. And, even now I want to make sure I can spend a certain amount of time with Zion or, do my own grocery shopping or whatever. And what I realized too is just I didn't actually have a system in place and like boundaries around like, okay, these are how many people I'm willing to take on. These are the type of clients I'm willing to work with. Oh, I don't have to do way more to justify my value. Right. So it's really understanding that, like, okay, it's the stories I make up in my own head. And was this fear of, am I going to be losing my time if I do have this level of success?
Mhm. I laughed initially, and I've been smiling so much because I feel like you're speaking for me. I've had those same exact thoughts before where it's like, if I blow up, I'm not even gonna have time for myself. What am I gonna have left to give?
Right.
I guess it was something that I struggled in the past with where I didn't really know how to manage my time and I was working on other people's dreams instead of my own. So that was also where I was at in
Yeah.
my headspace anyway.
Feel that.
What do you find are the most common limiting beliefs of the people that you work with?
Yeah. So the people that I work with now, these are what I would call, whether I guess the term that's out there be like high achievers. So these are people who are, they're lawyers, they're executives, they're business owners. They're essentially people who have had a lot of success in their career. But what they've realized by the time they're interested in working with me is that they have sacrificed so much of their own health, their relationships, their own hobbies and free time in order to get to this career success. And one of the biggest misconceptions that they have is they think that, well, now I'm gonna have to spend a bunch of time to work on my health, or I gotta do all of these stressful things to get healthy, and my life is already super stressful. And something that I tell them, especially working with me, is my system is built on simplicity, right? And obviously, simple doesn't mean easy, right? But in terms of the steps that we take, once we uncover what your lifestyle is like and how much your work responsibilities are, your family responsibilities are, we find the simplest, highly effective ways to incorporate health into your busy lifestyle so that it doesn't feel like it's more stress. But actually, when you do these simple things, you actually realize that your stress levels come down, that you have more energy, not only for your clients and for your colleagues and people that you work with, but now you have more energy when you get home for your wife, for your husband, for your kids. And then even beyond that, you have some energy for yourself too, to go do the things you want to do that you enjoy. Because that's what I talk about. I know it hasn't came up yet, but we talk about what does it mean to be dynamic. And what I'm telling people, it's like, yo, when you're dynamic, you're really good and effective at all aspects of your life. You're not just good at your career, or you're not just good at your health, or you're not just good with your family relationships, but you're good at all of them. And it doesn't mean that you're giving them equal priority all at the same time. There's different seasons of life, right? Like we've both trained athletes at the highest level, and how you train someone in the off season versus in season is very different, right? The focus is different, yet you don't completely take out, good nutrition or good food or good any of these things just because you're in this different season, right? So that's where my processes look like now. And, a lot of the limiting beliefs that my clients have had before working with me is that getting healthy is going to be adding more stress to their life, or it's going to take too much time and it's going to take away from either their family or from their work, when in reality it only adds to those things.
What is it? Occam's razor? I don't think I pronounced that correctly, but I was just reading it this morning. The simplest answer is usually the best one. How do you think that people complicate things then? And then on the flip side of that, what I'll ask you afterwards is, how do you make it simple? What does your system look like?
Yeah, for sure. No, I appreciate you asking that. So, I mean, in terms of how do people make it complex, I think what happens is there's so much noise out there, right? And when I say noise, it's like people have these specific goals, whether it's to lose weight and put or lose fat, put on muscle, whether it's to have more energy, whatever it is. It's like there's many ways to get to the top of the mountain. That's what I say. There's many paths, there's many ways to get there. But at the end of the day, a person has to figure out what works well for them. And I think when these people are trying to figure it out all on their own, and they don't have a great process of really diagnosing, like, what are the big problems? What are the things that are getting in the way? And ultimately, too, what are the things that work for them? Well, then they just start looking at all these different possible answers that are out there. And a lot of time, person A's answer contradicts person B's answer, and they just get confused. They say F it, and it's like, oh, there's no point of trying or being healthy, right? So that's one aspect of it. The way I make it simple is I have a whole intake process that really looks at, one, it's like, what's your goal and why is that goal important to you? Like, how do we make that thing the thing, right? Because if you don't have something that's important enough to change for, there's no way you're going to pull yourself out of the current habits that you have. You just won't. You know how the body is, you know how the brain is. We want the path of least resistance. We'll keep doing what we've been doing because it's easy in the sense that you don't have to think about it, right? So number 1 is defining what's that goal. And then 2, I have a whole assessment on what does your current lifestyle look like? And that includes your work life, your home life, and then what are you doing from a nutrition, training, recovery aspect, right? And then I have another part of it that goes into, well, what are the things you actually enjoy doing? What are the foods you like to eat? What's the type of activity you do like to engage in? And by taking all of that information, I can look at it and be like, oh, okay, here are the low hanging fruit that we can easily incorporate right now in the beginning for the fast wins. And by just doing that and removing just a lot of the just trash, which me and you, we know it comes in all different, shapes and forms and all that. But just by eliminating the trash and replacing it with some just high level things that will help them that they already enjoy doing, like that does 80% of the lifting. But most people on their own, they don't know how to figure that stuff out by themselves. But since you and I have been doing this for years, we can look at somebody's life and be like, okay, based off of what you're saying, what you want, and what your life looks like, here's the quickest way to success. And when I say quick, it's not a quick fix in the sense that you're going to lose it once you stop doing it, but it's quick in the sense of like, hey, these are things that are going to be easy habit changes because you already enjoy doing these things, and it's going to give you a big bang for your buck. Therefore, it's gonna be sustainable for you.
Just like reinvesting your energy. So you're getting a different return on your investment. It's always been strange to me because you work with like the high profile, successful business people. When I lived in Fort Lauderdale, I would see people going up to the penthouse top floors and they were carrying in pizza boxes, 2 liters of Coke. And in the back of my head, I know that if I was to eat those things, I would not be performing well at all.
Mhm.
So it blows my mind that people are even able to get to that position. And it's like they've front loaded their career success and then they put their health on the back burner. And unfortunately, for some people, I don't want to say that it's too late, but to dig yourself out of that hole when you've been engaging in these poor behaviors for decades, like things are not just going to happen overnight. And from what I've experienced, a lot of times things can get worse before they get better. So you talk about people just wanting to throw in the towel and quit. It's like now when you actually are on the right path, but you meet a road bump, now you just want to turn around.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it's great.
life.
I really like that you say that because it reminds me of, do you know Myron Golden? You ever follow his stuff?
Mm-mm.
He's great. I mean, he's very successful businessman, and a lot of his business principles are based off of biblical principles, right? So he's always, bringing it back to that. But one of the things that I watched him talk about, which I found true in my life, many of the people that I work with, is this idea that, it's like number one, everything starts with an awareness, right? It's like, okay, I'm aware that I have this problem and that I need to change it, right? And then after that awareness, now there's intention being the second step. It's like, okay, now I have an intention to go and change these things. I'm deciding to do these different things instead of what I was doing. But the most fascinating part is this third part. You have awareness, intention, and then he says that disruption always follows intention, meaning we set out to do something that is amazing and great. And it's like almost always something happens that tries to completely derail that, right? And I've seen it in my own life, and the way he describes it is in the Bible. He talks about after Jesus is baptized by John the Baptist, and he goes out into the desert for 40 days. It's like immediately in that time period, right? It's like the devil comes and tempts him, right? And then if I just look at just regular life, I just finished an 8-week program at TrueFit at the gym here that I got involved in, and one of my big goals with that gym is to really take a lot more of these lifestyle coaching practices into the gym. So I started a group called The Art of Healthy Eating, which is basically my framework on how to teach people how to eat well in a sustainable way, right? It's very principles based. And I told them in the first session, there was 12 people in the group. I told them the very first session, I said, look, all of you have this awareness that you need to change your food. You have created this intention by being here, investing money and time and energy to make these changes. And I'm like, I'm telling you right now, there's going to be stuff that comes up in these next 8 weeks that are going to try to completely derail your progress and the entire process that you're going through. But now that you know this and you're not going to be surprised by it, simply be ready for it and be ready to continue to move forward. And James, out of those 12 people, I'll say at least half of them had just crazy things come up, right? Like one person, their daughter was having a lot of issues, and no, she had to go deal with that. And then there's another person who just had a bunch of crazy work things come up. Another person got really sick, and just all these things just happen. And what happens when things like that occur is that it's really easy just to go back into the status quo of, well, all this life stuff's happening. I'm just going to eat crappy food again because that's what I'm used to. And that's what that's why I told them in the very beginning, like, look, this is going to happen. So for anyone listening to this, it's like, I want you to look back into your own life and think about when you were steadfast about making a change. Was there some type of disruption that happened? I guarantee you there was. And for anyone who's looking to make a change now, understand disruption is going to happen, but how do you develop the mental, emotional, spiritual fortitude to simply continue to move forward through that storm?
I like the awareness part of it and totally derailing this conversation, but it's funny how when something is brought to your attention, then it's just absolutely highlighted. So,
Hmm.
for instance, I'm going to say red truck, and now someone that's listening to this, all you're going to see is red trucks out there.
Yeah.
In the past, I didn't know about something that was called Santeria. It's like voodoo. And then literally within a week afterwards, I crazy story. I'm not going to go into that tangent, but I walked into this gentleman's house and he had a Santeria doll right in the front door. I would never known what that was before. I would have never thought anything different of it.
Hmm.
And Alex Ramosi, he mentions that temptation that you were talking about. He calls it the lady in the red dress. So every opportunity, every level, every time that you level up, the temptation is going to get stronger and stronger. That lady in the red dress, she's going to look hotter and hotter. And it's a test. It's something that I've experienced in my life too. Once you have the intention, and once you are taking action to pursue a different direction, like clockwork, something is going to come up to test if you actually want this bad enough.
Facts. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And yeah, the thing you're talking about, the reticular activating system, right? That part of our brain that, yeah, it's like, if I'm interested in getting this, black Jeep Grand Cherokee, right? And then it's like I'm here and I'm driving and like every time I drive, I see one. I'm like, what the like, but they were always there. But now that my brain is set on it, it keeps popping up, right? And I think that could be a powerful tool also for creating change, right? Where it's like, hey, if you want something bad enough and you put it on your heart, you put it front of mind, well, you can also start seeing a lot of opportunities to act on that thing and to make it better and to improve if you're open to doing so.
Mhm. Absolutely. So since we're talking about the reticular activating system right now, we could just blurt out everything that we want to bring to everyone's attention, like what you should avoid, what you should focus on.
Yeah.
What do you believe are some of the most impactful no excuses actions that someone would be able to take and
Mhm.
implement today that would drastically change your life?
Such a great question. It's such a great question. I was thinking about this too. And what I believe is that even before it gets to the action part of it, it really starts with who do you desire to become? Like, who are you going to be? Right. So instead of, I could easily say it's like, hey, well, you got to, drink clean water and, eat real food and all those things, which are very true. It's who you got to identify as from now on. Right. Are you the type of person that makes good decisions around your health? Are you identifying as a consistent person? Who is the person that you're deciding that you're going to be? Because that can create a powerful filter on these actions that you're going to take. But once you understand who it is you're going to be, I typically start with what are the things that you already do every day, right? So there's a couple of them. One is you sleep every night. So I think one of the easiest things to do is to optimize your sleep schedule and your sleep environment. Like if you're used to being in bed at midnight, it's like, hey, how do we get you to go to bed be in bed by 10 and start that whole nightly routine, have a quiet, dark, cool environment, right? And then another thing you do every day is you eat. So it's like, one, before we even say like, hey, here are the things you should eat, what are the things we can get rid of? It's like if you know you're eating fast food, if you know you're getting a bunch of processed snacks and whatnot, can you be willing to make your own meals? If you simply start with that, because you're gonna eat anyways. So instead of ordering out Uber Eats, going through the drive-through, if you want to make it as simple as possible, it's like don't do that and instead cook your own meals, right? Start from there. And then the third thing I would say is you're you're drinking something. You might not be drinking water yet, but it's like, hey, like drink half of your body weight in ounces of water. I tell people all the time, you don't get a headache because you have a Tylenol deficiency. You're getting a headache because you're probably dehydrated. You're not getting the vitamins and minerals and all the things you need through your diet. So, hey, drink more water. So those would be like the three like basic, no nonsense, like, hey, sleep more and sleep better, eat better, get some of the junk out or all the junk out, and drink clean water. You're already doing those things every day.
I love how you mentioned right there. I swear, bro, it's like you've read my stuff before, or we're just on that same wavelength. So I love having these conversations with you because what I've written in my program is what are you identifying as? This is literally part of my script. And a lot of people will choose to identify as this victim personality, and that kind of keeps you there. So, Steve, you're actually the one that introduced me to Steve. I heard him on your podcast. What he's mentioned before is if you fight for your limitations, then you get to keep them. So
No.
you can rewrite your story. Story is a word that you and Jade were saying shortly after gratitude training, and it would honestly piss me off. Like I would hear that. It's like, is that a story you're telling yourself? I'm like, I guess it is. I guess it
Yeah.
is. It made me really think about stuff. But
Right.
every single person that is listening to this, no matter where you are in your life, you have the opportunity to rewrite your story. But as difficult as it may be, you have to stop reliving and telling yourself of your past experiences. This was very difficult for me, especially after like my ACL surgery. I really don't like talking about it anymore because I want to move past there. And I feel like the more that I talk about it, the more I'm giving that life, the more that I'm giving that energy. And where your thoughts go, where your attention goes, your energy is going to flow. What I like to say is your words become your reality. So you kind of really got to monitor your thoughts and how you're thinking. As we've talked about before, you made a post about this. Uh, and how you were trying to make change within the church that you're going to in regards to like what they're offering at their services or at their events, and how it's not really going to be supportive of the human body. I fully believe that you can't really be fully in tune spiritually if you're ingesting literal poisons and toxins into the body, because the gut is going to affect the brain. Now, with all the tips that you just offered us, you committed in the beginning of the year to 1,000 healthy inputs in 100 days.
Yep.
What sparked that challenge for you, and what did that look like? What were those inputs?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. So for me, those inputs, I call them deposits, right? And more specifically, generational health deposits. So to me, generational health is how do I become so healthy and embody it and live it each and every day that my son Zion sees it and it becomes something that's passed down to him, not just because I tell him to do it, but because he sees me do it, right? So in the Bible, it says that a great man leaves his children's children an inheritance, right? So it's like I'm working on the wealth part right now too. I think it's very important. And it also got me thinking like what there's very little mention, at least I've seen, of people talking about how important it is to pass health down to their kids. And I got to thinking about it. I was like, well, if a parent's not healthy, how are they ever going to pass it down to their kids? So that what got me thinking about like, okay, what are the deposits that I do on a daily basis? Like how many healthy deposits am I making? And I sat there and I thought about, I'm like, I know I can do a lot. And I know I do a lot regularly. So for me at first it was kind of like a game of like, okay, what's a big number that I could do? And I was like, all right, maybe like 100. But I was like 100, no, it doesn't sound dramatic enough. So I was like, how about 1,000? I was like, all right, like let's get it. So I was like, all right, 1,000 deposits, right? Oh, I have a phone thing coming in my bad. So I was like, okay, 1,000 deposits. What does that look like? And the reason why I was tracking it daily is because one of the biggest problems I've seen in people that I work with is that they're hyper focused on what they don't have or what they haven't accomplished, and they can easily brush under the rug what they have accomplished or what they're in the process of accomplishing. And I can see that in my own life. A lot of my own imposter syndrome around, hey, how much should I charge for the work that I'm doing, right? For the transformations that I'm helping these people have. And for a long time in my career, whenever I accomplished something, I would just kind of sweep it under the rug. I wouldn't really count it. And because of that, I got, 5 years down the road and I'm still thinking I'm in the same place that I was before, skill wise and impact wise. And it was all because I wasn't counting my own wins. So after that, that's when I did start counting the wins in my own life and started applying that to my clients. So I did these deposits as a way for people to understand just how many wins you can have in one day. So my goal was to do 1,000 of them in 100 days, and I finished 1,076 days. Right. So if we do the math, that's like it's probably averaging like 15 to like 20 a day. Right. And it was interesting just to see. And to tell you the truth, James, there's a lot that I didn't even count. Because if I wanted to like really break it down, bro, I mean, you know how it is. It's like, well, here, let me start broad of how I did it. So if I would look at my entire day, right? And it's like, all right, did I get my at least 7.5 hours of sleep in? Yes, deposit, right? Did I get my morning hydration in? Yes, boom, deposit. Did I drink instead of a shitty coffee? Am I getting like good organic quality coffee? Yes, check, deposit. Am I drinking my total water for the day? Deposit. Did I have a great breakfast? Deposit. Great lunch? Deposit, right? Did I get my workout in? Deposit. Did I get in the sauna? Deposit. You know what I mean? Did I wear my organic underwear? You know what I'm saying? It's like, yes, deposit, right? Am I just put all my toiletries as one thing, but it's like, I could do it if I wanted to for each thing. Okay, my good toothpaste, deposit. The right deodorant, deposit. You know what I'm saying? The right type of lotion or beef towel thing or whatever, deposit. So like there's so many decisions and actions that each and every one of us do every day that if we decided to really optimize it or simply make the better choice, all of that can be a deposit in the generational health account. And I'm convinced that anyone with the awareness and the intention to do it can do 1,000 deposits in 100 days. Anybody.
I mean, it doesn't really sound too extraordinary because these are things that you're already doing, but the way that you're framing that, it's exactly that. If you are doing it and you actually take some time to reflect to see if these habits are benefiting you or not, if they're moving the needle forward,
Mhm.
since you're already doing it, it should be easy. You just need to swap what it may be. And perhaps it's a conversation like this where you were unaware that, yeah, frying your eggs in the morning in canola oil or maybe eating cereal, even though it's quote unquote heart healthy, that may not be serving you the way that you think it is. And then if you were just to swap it with something, it's the same action, same activity,
Yep.
now you can experience an entirely different result. So inputs are going to reflect the outputs. And when I was up in Michigan with you, when we were playing, what was that game? It was like little hacky sack and the nets. I
Oh
had fun
yeah.
with it. I had a blast.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we got super competitive with that, that's for sure.
One thing that you kept saying over and over, and I was cracking up, but it's stuck with me ever since, is chip away. Chip away, Alvy, chip away.
Yep.
That's what you're doing. You're chipping away at your health.
100%. 100%. Yeah, that's what I think is important about anyone thinking about creating change. I think the automatic go-to is thinking about like the end outcome. And again, if you've been unhealthy, you've been doing your life a certain type of way up to this point, and you're like, damn, I've been messing up, say, for the last 15 years. And now the accumulation of those 15 years of bad habits have, got me to this point. Well, now if I think about how long and all the things it's gonna take for me to get to the other side of that, it's like, yeah, it's gonna take time, but number 1, the time's gonna go by anyways, so who cares about that aspect? And 2, don't even focus on the end goal per se, but what are the daily, weekly actions that are gonna get you to the end goal? Like, that's what matters, and that's where the whole chipping away analogy comes through, where it's like, "All right, yeah, I might be losing by 100 points, but it's like, all right, well, the game's up to 150, so I need to just chip away. How I close the gap, close the gap, close the gap. And through the consistent actions, inevitably, especially if you're playing this game against yourself, you can win.
I like that. I like how I was able to bring that game back in here. I
I
love how
love
it all
that.
kind of came full circle, man.
I love that. I got my own set now, so when y'all come over and hang out, because it's good weather again, we'll get back to it. I haven't been practicing, so you don't have to worry.
It's all good. It's all good. I've been practicing.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
So you mentioned Zion. How has becoming a father shifted your priorities, your perspectives, and has it changed the way that you see yourself and maybe others, the world?
Yeah, no, yeah, it's definitely changed a lot as I know right, being a father now, where I mean, it's one of these things where, like, don't get me wrong, I don't think I've been very selfish the last few years, but it's like now it's really not about me. You know what I mean? Like there's certain, decisions and things I might have made to where now it's a no-brainer no because I have my son. And it's like I want to put that energy and everything into him. And also too, just noticing how much he notices, right? Even he's only 4 months, will be 5 months next week. And it's like I get to be on my P's and Q's all the time because he's always watching. And something I noticed is like even with my phone, like even before he was born, I was like, all right, these are the boundaries I'm gonna put around him for the phone. I don't want him on a phone. I don't want him on tablets and all this stuff. Like I want him outside, interacting with nature, interacting with people, all these things. And then I had to check myself because I'm sitting down with him and I was on my phone and I'm looking at him look at me while I'm on my phone, and he's trying to stare at my phone now, right? Like, not even the screen part, like, just, like, my green case that I have. He's just looking at it, and I'm like, "Damn, he probably thinks this is, at the very least, super intriguing because he sees me looking at it." So it's like, I already had to check myself, be like, "Alright, like, when I'm around Zion, like, I'm putting my phone to the side," or, like, even what am I doing on my phone when I'm on it, right? Because it's one thing if I'm using it for as a way to make an impact, as a business tool, but it's another thing if I'm just on it wasting time. So it's been really funny just realizing like, okay, like leading by example starts early, 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 early. And it's like, if I don't want him on the phone, well, I sure as hell can't be on the phone. So that's been one aspect of it. And then I would say from there too, it's given me even more appreciation for my mom and my dad. Like I don't talk about my dad's story too much. Like we're not super close, but we had, before our conversations would be like 5 minutes at a time, 10 minutes at a time. He wouldn't really have much to say, and I wouldn't really ever try to pull anything out of him. And once Zion was born, I was trying to get in contact with him and I couldn't. He just wasn't answering the phone. And come to find out, he was just going through a lot of, personal things and things he was thinking about. So he wasn't even really trying to talk to anybody. But when I got on the phone with him finally, we had the longest conversation that we've ever had in our life. Like we had a 2 hour plus conversation on the phone, which is, I mean, low key, that's probably like the amount of time of conversation we had on the phone in the last 10 years. You know what I mean? So just having a whole new appreciation for my dad and even added appreciation for my mom and just understanding that like I truly believe all parents are doing their best. You know what I mean? Like they're doing their best in the sense that they want their kids to be happy, successful, all these things. I look back at, both of our parents, right? Where it's like they grew up in that era of like saturated fat being the devil, eat a bunch of carbs, the heart healthy stuff, don't eat red meat, blah, blah, blah. And it's like they came up in the middle of that propaganda so that we were all eating margarine and, wheat bread and just all types of trash. But, like, I look back now and I'm just like, man, I do my best to have compassion for him and being like, being a parent is hard, man. It's a whole added responsibility. And don't get me wrong, when I say it's hard, not like I love it. I love hard things, right? But it's hard in the sense that, if a person's not already good with themselves and they can't give from that full cup, I can imagine how difficult being a parent is. And I look back at my mom and her situation, it's like, all right, she was a single mom, raising my brother and I all by herself, and she was also on disability, and she had a victim mentality, and she was on all these medications, and she didn't feel well, and she was very insecure and didn't like the way she looked, and you know would try to overcompensate by doing all these things for everybody else to get that external validation. And, when I was younger in my 20s, like I talked about earlier, like it really upset me that she'd want to do all these things for me and everyone else, but not for herself. And now I look back, it's like, man, she was really just doing the best she could with what very little she had, little in the terms of energy, little in the terms of like vitality, and also just information. And it's one of these things where, you and I, we're in a very interesting place because we see behind a lot of the bullshit that's out there. You know what I mean? And we see it in all different aspects of life, whether it's within the family unit, whether it comes to health, to schooling, to technology, to government, to you name it, social media. Like there's so much out there. And yet it's still on us to, protect our kids and to lead by example and do the right things and to speak the truth. And it's 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 not easy, but it's necessary. So, I appreciate all the stuff that you're doing and the conversations you're constantly having.
Well, what you were saying in the beginning that I've said on here several times, but I've saw it years before I even became a parent. It helped me as a trainer because it really made me reflect on how I was acting on other people was kids don't follow what you say, they follow what you do. So don't just talk the talk, you gotta walk the walk too. Don't talk about it, be about it.
100%.
And yeah, it amazes me how much the human body can endure. Our parents went through that era where they didn't have information.
Right.
I'm able to find my stuff on the information by scouring, and it's still kind of hard to come by. But before, when there was no internet, I want to know like the quote unquote conspiracy theorists that have known about everything that's been going on for like 40 years because
Yeah.
they had to have been like screaming from the hilltops, like, turn the other way. But no one was listening. They wouldn't look that way. How did you come across this information? Now, with Zion, I love asking dads this. I love having dads on here. Because as you know, we're expecting our second child
Mm.
in September.
Oh, nice. I wasn't sure if you had announced it yet, so I didn't wanna talk about it.
No, by the time that this comes out, will be released in the news. It's gonna be released probably tomorrow.
Nice.
Not
Jake
this
can't hide it
episode,
no
but
more, huh? Yeah.
yeah, no, no, no. Can't hide it nowhere.
Let's go.
But I love having dads on here to kind of discuss this stuff because the first pregnancy, I didn't know what the hell to express. We went with a midwife. I didn't know what pregnancy would look like for Jade, any of the emotions that would come up, how stressful this would be on me, what type of feelings that I would have, what type of grieving process that I would have because my whole life is going to change too. But meanwhile, we don't really talk about that or we don't really think about it as men because that's not really, it could be frowned upon to express these type of things.
Mm.
Throughout Alhanja's pregnancy, whether it was actually during the pregnancy or postpartum, what has been the biggest challenge for you throughout that period?
But just for me personally, in terms of, like, becoming a father and all of that,
Mhm,
I mean, honestly, I think the biggest one would be really the financial piece in the sense that, for the longest time working for myself, it could be these very highs and lows in terms of cash flow. Like I've had months where it's, 25K in a month and I feel like I'm on top of the world. And then there's a month where I make literally $1,000. And it's one thing to ride that roller coaster by myself. It's another thing, even being married and riding that roller coaster. But now knowing that my son was going to be here, I'm like, yo, I get to really get my systems down and be in a place where the finances aren't going to be a stressful part. Like it really is on me to handle that. And especially too when I want, Alejandra to be watching Zion and to be a stay-at-home mom, not because I want her to, but because it's also what she wants. It's like, okay, well, in order to get her to not be working, well, I need to make sure that I'm making not only enough money, but the consistent money to really provide that type of security for the entire family. So as Alejandra was pregnant, it was really on me getting clear on like, all right, like how do I want to move forward with my business, with how I work with others, the type of opportunities I say yes to. Because one of my biggest problems reflecting back in the past is this, and maybe you can relate to this, but because I am a talented person and because most people who I come into contact with, they like me, there's all these opportunities that come up, right? And because of that, I would jump to like certain opportunities because I thought like, okay, like this sounds like a great idea and I get really excited about it. But looking back, it's like, there were some of those opportunities that I was jumping at that looking back weren't the right things for me and for my family. So as Alejandra was pregnant, we're going through this process. I'm like, yo, I really got to dial in on this and make sure that I am able to provide for all of us and make sure that we can eat all the good food, have a great place to live, be able to do the things and visit family or have family come here. And that was for me, I feel like it was like the last step that I needed to take to really be the fullest version of myself, to be that dynamic man where everything's dialed in. Because I'm almost like the opposite of my clients in a sense, where it's like I focused on the health first and put a lot of the financial career things on the side. Not really career, more so just financial, like being a good steward of money, making sure that I'm always spending within my means and not, taking extra trips or doing extra this, extra that when I can't afford it during that time period because business might have been slower. Right. So that's where a lot of that maturation came from. And now I'm at a spot now where, business wise, I feel so clear, dialed in, know who it is that I want to work with and how I want to work with them, and do it in such a way too where I still have my time that I can spend time with Alejandro, with Zion, with, friends and, taking trips to the cabin and all that type of stuff, rather than it being this, hustle and grind culture. Oh, I got to work 60, 80 hours a week and not see my son grow up. Like, not to make that wrong or bad, it's just not what I want. So that's been the biggest thing in terms of what's shifted in myself of being like, you know what, it's time to dial in on this aspect of my life and treat it with the same level of seriousness and respect that I do my health.
I feel the same way. We're not exactly rich at the moment, but as you stated, we put the foundational principles of health first. So we're not on medications. Like we feel good, we're energetic, we're able to think clearly, we don't have brain fog. And for the past few years, I've just poured into education, whether that be the bookshelf that I have in front of myself with thousands upon thousands of dollars worth of books, continuing education courses. So I know that that is my investment there. And then no matter what happens, like I'm going to be able, since I develop skills, I will be able to help people. I will be able to find work no matter what.
Yep.
And the part that I struggle with the most, you mentioned it there at the end, is time. What's become very clear to me is I don't want to fall in that hustle and grind culture either. Because the moment that I walk out of the door some days, I hear Jax, if he's up before I leave, he'll cry that he wants daddy. He wants to like play with me in the morning. And I honestly love that. So what's come up for me is if where I'm spending my time outside of that is not fulfilling me, I don't want to do it. But then there's the balance where it's like, okay, you got to bring in the money, you got to support the family. And it's a huge jump, jumping from being single to married life into fatherhood. It's like
Hmm.
everything changes. Yeah, you
Oh,
can't just throw money and spend it recklessly. You got to actually be aware and you got to actually budget.
100%.
If you could instill just a few core values in Zion that would guide him for life, what would they be?
Oof.
What would you want him to know that you didn't know?
Yeah, I think one of the first ones is personal responsibility. Just understanding that any situation that he finds himself in, anything that quote unquote happens to him, it's like it's on him to fix it. You know what I mean? Not to say that he'll never have help from me or anyone else, but just to understand like, hey, if you want something to change, it's like you get to change it, right? It's on you to make that happen. So personal responsibility is a big one because I don't ever want him to feel like a victim because I know I had that, especially like in my football career, in college, and then obviously my mom had a lot of that for a lot of her life, right? So that would be one of them. A second one is keeping God close. You know what I mean? Like having a relationship with God, understanding that he's not doing anything by himself. You know what I mean? Like as long as he taps in and he keeps, God close to him, he's gonna have any and everything that he would possibly need to like make things happen. Right. And then the third one would be really focusing on his health, like making health a priority, right? Like that whole idea of generational health where if you're doing the right things for your health, you have an able body, you're mobile, you're strong, you eat well, you manage your stress well, you know what I'm saying? All those types of things. You focus on the 360 approach to health, like you're going to be ultra, successful and fulfilled. So those would be the main three that come up. And if I throw a fourth one in there, it would be this part of and this even goes with the God aspect, but just having a level of compassion. You know what I mean? It's like every person is going through their own individual journey. And if we can just remember that that person is also a human being, is one of God's creations, can we provide the same level of grace or some level of grace to them that, God gives us each and every time. So I think if he could focus on those four things, he'd be in a good spot.
Pretty solid. So, yeah, man. Alvy, I've loved this conversation, brother. I always love speaking with you. You've definitely helped me over the past few years because as we were talking about before, I was an angry, bitter asshole. I'll just say it. I was an asshole before. I was in your shoes. We've had a lot of similar experiences, and how we were talking about the devil in the red dress. When you make this change or when you make this choice to go down a different route, there's going to be temptation. On the flip side of that, I believe that you will have guiding spirits, guiding angels as well. And I always found it interesting how we met at the Hive, but there would be random places that I would just see you out of nowhere, and I would not expect you to be there. It's like I think you were living down in Miami, and then I saw you and Alejandra in a Bed Bath and Beyond that was closing down.
Oh yeah.
And one day I saw you at a Whole Foods, which you didn't know this part, I don't think, at the time, but I was broke as hell. I was at rock bottom. I was
Mm,
driving over to Fort Lauderdale to understudy. I didn't have any money. I was working with clients. I was struggling to pay rent at the gym. I was undercharging, undervaluing myself. And you were there that day. We had a conversation, but I had $1.98 in my bank account that day.
mm,
$1.98. And just seeing you in these instances and being able to have our conversations always again gave me some type of, I don't want to say hope, but it just reminded me that not everything is bad and you kind of have to weather the storm. I think we've discussed The Alchemist before, how you have to persist when it seems like you're in a desert, when you don't have any signs.
mhm,
And what this is for me is having faith in God. So whenever I go through difficult times now, I don't worry because you can have either faith or you can have fear. And
mhm.
I rather lead in or lean into faith myself. That's served me in the past, and I know that it will serve me in the future as well.
Yeah, remember that's super powerful, man. Super powerful. No, it's been amazing to see your growth, and yeah, I remember even at that when we all met at that Bed Bath& and Beyond, it was me, Alejandra, and you were there. We were talking for a little bit. I was like and finding out about, you and Jade and, where you guys were at that part of your lives and all that type of stuff. And yeah, just to see the growth and just all the conversations and, for you guys to become dear, dear friends of ours have been, incredible. And yeah, man, we were, I was very early on, I was on a lot of you know, the the paleo and the seed oils and the this and the that back in like, 2016, 2015, like one of like the early adopters of it, or no, really like 2014. And, it's just, you were one of the only other people that I saw, later on in life, like starting to adopt it too. And, it's just been amazing to see your transformation, your growth, not just in your health and how you're helping people, but just as a man. It's been awesome.
Mhm. It only gets better.
Let's
And
go.
just to kind of reiterate what you mentioned before, how if you don't take care of yourself, then you are not really going to have much to pour out of. Your cup isn't going to be full. I fully agree with that. And I adhere to my nutritional principles because I know that that seeps into every other area of my life. So if I'm eating crap, I know I ate crap on the Michigan trip. That was absolutely
Mhm.
the last time that I had anything like that. I don't know what happened. I went overboard. Jade
Uh-huh.
even called me out on it. But ever since then, I have been strict, man, and it pays off, pays dividends, and it allows me to pour in my family. It allows me to pour in my work, my clients, and that's one thing that I'll recommend everyone, every father really to do is hone in on your health. Because if not, I can only imagine how difficult being a parent could be
Amen.
or making your
Amen.
life hard.
100%. Yeah, I think, diet's been a catalyst in my life, and it's like once I changed my diet, everything in my life shifted, and yeah, I would highly recommend it for every man.
It starts there.
Yes, sir.
Awesome, brother. Alvey, thank you for this conversation. Thank you for your time, brother.
Boom.